Alright, so it looks like I messed up. Again. And I'm hoping that this is a good reminder that having people review your code is a very valuable thing. Hi, my name's Nick Cosentino, and I'm a Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. In a previous video, I was talking about using MoreLINQ with the batching operation, and we were looking at benchmarks related to MoreLINQ and some of the other variations, like hand-rolling our own implementation of this. I did make a mistake in my benchmarks, and a viewer pointed it out in the comments, so I'm very thankful for that. It's a small little bug, but it unfortunately changes the results of the benchmarks. So I wanted to make this follow-up video to do some justice to these benchmarks. Again, huge thanks to the viewer for making a comment about this and not attacking me for it, because yes, I am only human and this kind of thing will happen. If you like these kinds of videos, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out that pinned comment for my courses on DTrain. And with that said, let's jump over to Visual Studio, look at the mistake I made, and then look at the new updated benchmarks so we can compare these things properly. Alright, so in the previous video, which if you haven't seen yet, I will go link it up top. You can go check that out and come back. I was introducing the MoreLINQ batch operation that we can use. And that just explains how we can go through collections or enumerables and essentially chunk them up into smaller batches that we want to iterate across. That video talked about those details and that went into some of the benchmarking results, comparing them to some naive implementations, which I do have in this code as well. But I want to focus on the mistake. So if we look right here on line 61, I have a batch of 100. This is a fixed size batch, which on the surface doesn't seem like a problem. But if we look at the other benchmarks, we can see that I'm using this parameter called batch size. And this other benchmark, same thing, using this parameter called batch size. And up top, we can see that I have these two parameters, collection size and batch size, which are supposed to be adjusted for every benchmark that we're running. So when we started to look at the results, we had one outlier that was always fixed at 100. So the other two benchmarks were properly cycling through these different batch sizes, so both manual approaches had that, but this one down here was fixed at 100. So this does need to say batch size. So again, huge thanks to the viewer for pointing that out, leaving a comment, and doing so in a way that wasn't attacking me, because of course I want to make this right and show you the correct information. I have no affiliation with MoreLINQ or anything else going on here, so I'm not trying to make it stand out as good or bad. I'm just trying to give you information to work with and hopefully teach you how you can use benchmarks and things like that for your own code. So yes, a very good lesson here to take away is that having other people review your code can be very helpful. With that said, I'm not going to walk through all the benchmarks, what batching does again. I just want to jump over to the benchmark results, and then we'll walk through that. If there's any more analysis or sort of thought process for why some of the numbers look the way they do, we can start comparing and talking about some of the details for what's going on with batching. Before we continue on, this is just a quick reminder that I do have courses available on DTrain. If you're just getting started in your programming journey and you want to learn C#, you can head over to DTrain. I have a Getting Started in C# course. It's approximately 5 hours of content, taking you from absolutely no experience to being able to program in C#. And after that, I have my Deep Dive course, which will take you to the next level with another 6 hours of content so that you can start building basic applications. Head over to DTrain and check it out. Let's head back to the video. I'm going to pull up trusty Photoshop here. Unfortunately, I didn't take a screenshot of the other metrics from the previous video, so when I go to cycle through them, you'll see that when I toggle this layer, it's a little bit more blurry. I apologize for that. I will read out the numbers for you because that magenta color in particular looks a little bit fuzzy, so I do apologize for that. But what I've done is I've gone through with some red and highlighted where there's, in my opinion, some big differences. What's super interesting, and I'm going to start with it, is the allocated column on the far right is very, very comparable. So if we just have a quick look through, so we'll start at the top. The blurry version that's on right now is from the previous video. You can see that I've just taken a screenshot. So the bottom right, you can see that's where my sort of head is overlaid. If it's not currently being overlaid with my head in the current video, but this blurry version is going to be the previous video. So we can see that in basically every single case, except for a couple sort of midway, like halfway down here, the MoreLINQ implementation is using significantly less memory. The only time that wasn't really happening was sort of where my cursor is right now, and otherwise a little bit lower in the very bottom right-hand corner. Again, it's very close, but it's not, so it's a little bit more with MoreLINQ, but it's not winning by a landslide. Otherwise, it was either the same or winning by a landslide. So the allocated column, if I toggle this and we go look at the sort of the new data, it's still basically always winning by a landslide or very comparable. So I didn't have anything extra interesting to call out. So if you just, again, do a quick scan, MoreLINQ is winning by a landslide for all of these, and the top when we're doing a collection size of 10. When we start going a little bit lower here, just double checking, winning by a pretty large margin. Going even further, especially at this batch size of 1 for this collection size of, what is that? That's 1 million. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more allocation going on here, but we can see that it's still very significantly improved for MoreLINQ. So very, very good. Pretty comparable in this next batch in the bottom here. And then half the memory allocation. And then we basically see that same thing repeated for the next set of collection sizes. I did kind of trim off the bottom just because I couldn't get a full screenshot from the previous video, but hopefully you can kind of see the pattern going on there. There is not a big difference at all from the previous implementation when we were fixed at a batch size. And I should call out, I think the reason that's the case is because when we're talking about how much RAM is being used here, I'm allocating the collection outside of the benchmark method. So the collection itself that we're iterating across should not be taking up RAM according to the benchmark. That should be a separate thing. Within the benchmark, it makes sense that the size of the batch is going to be the thing that indicates how much memory is being used, because as we're iterating and yielding back each batch, we're only having one batch at a time, ideally. That seems to be how MoreLINQ is able to get this to work, so that seems pretty impressive. It's pretty consistent. In my implementation that was kind of naive, it's not quite like that. It's pretty close, but I think there's some other optimizations I could do. So again, on the allocation side, not a lot of big differences. But let's jump back over to this mean column, because I think we'll probably still see that MoreLINQ beats me in every single situation, which is what I would expect. But I do want to show like by how much, because I think that's changing a whole bunch. So again, we'll focus on the red here, and let me get this deselected. So starting with the first one, we can see the MoreLINQ batching. I had like, what's this? This is 30,000 nanoseconds and 22,000 nanoseconds. They were only at 3.5 for this was a batch size of 1, but I had them at a batch size of 100, remember? So if I toggle this off, we can see that when it's truly a batch size of 1, their performance is worse, but it's still better than what I had. So it's better by, it's like half the runtime, but instead of being like way, way, way better. So that's pretty good. This next one here, again, it kind of works the opposite way. Their batch size, even though it says 1,000, is technically 100 because it was hard coded. So this was showing that they were basically on par with what I had, right? Slightly better, but basically on par. But if I toggle this off, we can see that when it's actually a batch size of 1,000, they are significantly more effective. So that's a huge win for them compared to my code. Jumping to the next one, we'll see, so they would have been at a batch size of 100, right, because it was hard-coded. This is now a batch size of 100,000, so a huge improvement. You can see that it's not even changing the runtime really between the previous one and the next one coming up, but if we put this layer back on, it's, again, it was still way faster than what I had when it was fixed at 100 for the batch size, but when you do it properly and we have the batch size increasing proportionally, it's going to save more runtime. So a huge improvement just by doing this properly, which is pretty interesting to see. So next up is down here. We can see the MoreLINQ batching. This says a batch size of 1. This would have been 100. This is the new result where it's truly using a batch size of 1. So it's pretty crappy runtime, but still about half the runtime that I had when we were doing the manual streaming approach. Putting this back on, when it was like this, where it's blurry, this is when it used truly a batch size of 100. So 100 as a batch size is going to be more effective than a batch size of 1 because it has to yield back fewer times. It's doing like 2 orders of magnitude fewer of those, right? So we would expect to see this be better. And that's why when I take this off, you can see the performance here looks worse. It's still better than my implementation. Now in the middle here, we basically end up having roughly the same runtime. If I put this back on, all these numbers are quite comparable, so nothing too interesting. I did want to call out that this MoreLINQ batching here, this next red highlight, it's basically, this one is a quarter of the runtime and this is when it's truly using the correct batch size. The original results where it was still using 100, this is still better, but I just wanted to show that there is a bit of a discrepancy. So this is a quarter and this is basically like it was comparable. When you have a smaller batch size, you have to yield back more times. There is going to be likely more overhead for that, more copying for each batch. This was better, but it was better than my code, right? But it was still not as performant when doing it the proper way for the right batch size. And then the same type of pattern we're going to see in the code that follows. So not really a huge value add for me to go step through all of that, but I just want to, I'll toggle it again now that your eyes are in this sort of bottom area in the middle of the screen. And same idea when we're truly using the right batch size. You'll see that going from 1 to 100 and the other way, that you have this scale properly. So overall, this is a miss on my part, so I do apologize for that. It's a small bug. I probably should have taken a little bit more time to see that in the code. So again, my apologies. Huge thanks to the viewer. If you ever see this kind of thing in my code in my videos, please just let me know. Like I said, my goal is not, I'm not trying to trick you. I do spend a lot of time putting content together, but it's easy to make a mistake. So my intention is never to mislead, and I would much rather follow up with a video, spend some extra time doing it. Keep in mind, it costs me to make videos. I don't make money off of doing these, maybe someday. So for me to go make a video to follow up, I'm just trying to do the right thing. So hopefully this was helpful. I will have more, this is going to be weird to say, more LINQ benchmarks and comparisons coming up. So there's bound to be other errors in the future, unfortunately. So please, I do appreciate you keeping your eyes open and trying to call this stuff out. So thanks so much for watching. And yeah, stay tuned for the next set of videos as we go through MoreLINQ and check out these benchmarks. I'll see you next time.